Здравствуйте, доброе утро. Welcome, welcome. Some thoughts I need to share today with you is the first thought is that high justice is coming in many known and unknown courts. And that's going to be on a large scale level. There's courts in heaven, which are of course the highest courts, but the earthly courts, man's courts, are going to see a big shifting. And for the record, I would like to state that I never consented to brain wipe when I was turning into an adult age, when I was supposed to be making my own legal decisions at that point, or able to. I had only talked about being brain wiped with my family when Terry, who is the head of my family, suggested it would be the best thing for the family to do so that we could just move from our past and try to operate as a normal family. But I had other plans, and when I was 18, I was going to help get myself into a better location. My sister was going to help me in bringing charges against my family, and instead, my birthday present for that year on that cold winter day was to have my life stripped away from me and taken away. And this is also why it's important to get to the root of initial splits, because it helps you identify why you have an ambivalence or feeling towards things, like I always have had on my birthday before I identified this, and you can't quite put your finger on it. So when you vocalize things, when you identify them, it helps, because some of you haven't even done that. And one example is I'd like to honor Sean Horton the best way that I can, because he had so much information and knowledge when it would just come out in spurts, and he could talk about things for hours and then piece them together in a coherent fashion, but he never actually made his timeline, or he never actually got his story out in digestible increments to where people could understand his involvement with the programs and so on. So, as difficult and brilliant as he could be sometimes, he still had the most struggle with emotional clearing, and which I have seen with every involvee that I've met or had relationships with. It always goes back to this and the heart issue and clearing the heart and the heart space. So when you vocalize things and that stronghold on your voice is removed, it helps the rational brain process the rest of the fringe outlying areas and the fringe parts of your own puzzle to become stabilized and to keep moving forward, because that's the whole point. We want to keep moving forward, not be pulled backward. So his dad, Robert Horton, which also comes from Horton Hears a Roo, or Horton Hears a Who book, he owned various movie theaters all across the U.S., mainly in Kentucky. And these were programming and trafficking hubs, pickup points. A lot of black limos came to these places that Sean was subjected to, as he'd be drugged through them all systematically. And, if I have the courage to say things publicly, and go out and say things like, my grandfather was an adrenochrome child serial killer who tried to stab me with a knife when I was 8. Father was a programmed multiple sociopath, also handler, who tried to drown me when I was 11. Surrogate chimeric mother, also programmed multiple, witch from the 1700s. Because when you absorb your own twin for months, then your DNA won't match your children's DNA. And then my siblings were cloned and replaced. Okay, if I can say all those things publicly, then that should give you a platform to be able to vocalize what you need to say too. Then I think that you can call your past people out for who and what they are too, and there's no shame and there's no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. Because God will take anything that was meant for your harm and turn it into good, and we're living testimonies and proof of that. And so many people kind of want to skirt around looking at their truths or make excuses so that they choose to stay in their screen memories, some people, because they can't face their real ones, or realize and admit that they themselves were trafficked, and that was a hook point into the other programs which kept them moving and being used for evil purposes. So The ones that really need help are the ones that are still stuck in these things, that are going to become and stay satanic super soldiers, because they just can't face their own reality, or they're by their own free will and volition choosing to choose evil instead of good. Some of them, the kids that were involved, they just need help because they're not coming out because of maybe embarrassment, or maybe whatever reasons they are. Whatever those reasons are, it's causing them to not fully get free, to get completely, fully set free. Because when you take the emotional charge off of something, then you can look at it objectively and not subjectively, as like your own film strip and timeline, without getting stuck, and then see things clearly and not convoluted. And it's also important to filter out who you talk to in your life, because other people can convolute things too and may not be placed there for the most benevolent reasons. So we may have been given some heavy duty work here as a soul family, but our rewards in heaven are far greater than anything the current elite own on this earth and in the earth, or even in space, because Yahushua has prepared many mansions for us. And I did try to make things right. Sometimes it doesn't go the way that you want it to, of course. So I even told the courthouse that I knew about missing persons from the 80s, and they told me that it was too long of a statute of limitations and they couldn't help me. And the two people that I mentioned were dead, so they really didn't help me, and that was surprising to me.